Thanks for listening to Star Lores. If you like the show, please consider subscribing and giving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help us make more great content by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com. We would also love to hear from you on social media. You can follow Star Lores on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Enjoy the show, and may the Force be with you.
You are listening to the Star Lores Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. We're on the way from Coruscant to Ossus on the extremely long Rima trade route, trying to get away from the big city. Can't imagine why. And I'm, of course, Sam.
This is Jordan.
I'm Christian. Welcome to Star Lores. Today we have a guest joining us.
Oh, who's that?
Hey, my name is Frankie.
Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, Frankie.
Thanks for having me.
What podcast? I thought we were on a ship.
We podcast from our ship. And
guys got to
project it
keep
to the
kayfabe.
Yeah, this is an intergalactic
radio transmission.
Yeah.
It takes thousands of years to reach the other side of the galaxy.
Why do you think the Millennium Falcon had that big radar dish?
Exactly.
This is the Millennial 215.
Anyways, Frankie is actually Christian's brother.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yeah, Frank, thanks for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, man. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Super excited.
Cool.
Been,
Give us a little bit of your personal story in the fandom of Star Wars.
For sure, yeah. Very similar to Christian's. Grew up kind of around Star Wars in the house a lot. Dad was a fan and kind of introduced us to it at a very young age. Star Wars was actually the first movie that I remember any serious attachment to. I do remember having the discussion and just how mind blown I was discovering Vader is actually Luke's father for the first time, and having to actually ask my dad at the dinner table, like, Dad, is Vader actually Luke's father? This is just blowing my 5-year-old mind. So yeah, it's been a fun journey ever since. Until
I think that's a staple for most people's childhood.
for sure.
That is a very 90s experience.
Absolutely.
I feel.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, in this episode, we will be reviewing Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So, Sam, you want to kick us off into the topic?
Yeah, so of course, like with all Star Wars movies, we get that wonderful opening crawl of the script going up through space. And it's very thrilling. In the first paragraph, George Lucas mentions taxes. That's a good way to start off your summer
Galactic
tentpole
opera
action movie.
The worst way to start off anything.
Talking about
Just talking about taxes.
Starting a society. Taxes.
So sometimes when I'm like reading a book or watching a movie, that's just like, and there's something that just seems like atrociously not just bad, but like incompetent. Like I start to do headcanon and think like, were they really just being like super ironic on like some sort of high level? And is that what George Lucas was trying to do? He was like, talking about the only two certainties in life are death and taxes.
It's actually a very deep thought.
So it's actually like foreshadowing about how much death there's going to be in this movie by talking about taxes. But
Totally.
that's probably being a little too generous to our friend George.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me that the whole reason that the Jedi, as the opening crawl finishes telling us, should I wait till that siren goes. Okay. I'd finished.
Just a space ambulance. Don't worry about
Tell us that the Trade Federation has blockaded Naboo, and they're not allowing supplies to go in or out because of taxes. And in response, the Jedi Council has sent 2 Jedi Knights to, and we're having a little bit of contention over this. I put 2 big scare quotes around negotiate because these are trained killers who not only are armed as they walk into the negotiation chambers. You see, they have their lightsabers at their belt.
Hard disagree.
Yeah,
Hard disagree.
And they have mind control abilities, which they could certainly use on the Neomoidian negotiators. So I almost say that the Neomoidians trying to kill them, considering that how the Jedi were armed when they went on, is almost justifiable.
Maybe, but I feel like they're armed against an entire droid army on a ship.
Yeah,
they are. But as the Neomoidians say, I don't know how true all of this is. I'm sure there's a lot of backstory leading up to Phantom Menace that I'm not privy to. But what they were doing was perfectly within the law of the Republic. Their blockade was perfectly legal. They weren't doing anything wrong by doing that.
Yeah.
So the Jedi.
However, I do think it would be sort of common procedure for Jedi Knights to come and broker deals, be peace deals, and they would have their sidearms with them.
Also, not to mention that literally they blew up their ship that was unarmed and passively in the hangar bay.
But they did that after the fighting
is this turning
started.
into
After.
Was it after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this turning into a who shot first?
A little bit.
The Trade Federation did nothing wrong. They're unfairly maligned.
This is a communist ploy to malign industry.
Oh, I did find some tie-ins to Ayn Rand, by the way. Hold on to that for later.
Okay.
It's going to get good. So moving on, I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. I think the Jedi were acting in bad faith. But that's just me.
But that's not the way the narrative represents it.
I do think you
right?
stand alone
Like
on
even
that.
if it's an interesting like thought experiment, but it's not how it's represented in the narrative.
I will give you credit about the Jedi mind tricks, like to send negotiators that could potentially just mind control someone in negotiations is an interesting moral or ethical question.
Exactly.
But
Feel like
they have to
though-
have a Watto on hand at all times.
Toydarian.
Yeah.
So here's a question.
Or a hut.
Or a hut.
Yeah, or a hut to resist mind tricks.
Here's a question though, like, oh man, this could get into a real side trail on the ethics of like Jedi mind tricks, but like I feel like for the most part, especially in the movies, whenever the Jedi use Jedi mind tricks, it's generally to like help what would be considered maybe the light side,
Yes.
right?
I mean,
So
there's that whole. I mean, that basically is a cheat for your alignment setting in the KOTOR games, right? How
totally.
you use your mind tricks.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what though? There isn't. We're not going to the rabbit trail because this actually is super relevant to episode 1 in the character of Qui-Gon Jinn.
For sure, yeah.
Qui-Gon is very much portrayed as like a rogue, even within the council.
Yeah.
And you see him use mind tricks quite a
So
bit
much.
in this movie.
Space hip.
It's true, yeah.
And I wonder if like the Jedi practice, like we only used mind tricks, when absolutely necessary to prevent conflict or violence, right? They're like, okay, this is a last resort kind of negotiation
I would also
tactic.
think.
Whereas Qui-Gon just throws his weight around, just like, no, I need this done. I'm going to do whatever I can to get it done. Right?
Yeah.
Because again,
For
he's
sure.
that
Yeah, he's
rogue,
kind of that-
roguelike character, right?
Yeah.
So
One more rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The dark side powers that some of the more ancient ones that are first presented in the Tales of the Jedi comics are a lot to deal with, like that sort of illusion school of magic of like manipulating people's perceptions, like what they're doing with the Jedi mind trick as well. So I think it would sort like it does seem like a Jedi mind trick would at least a little bit always be kind of dark side.
So
a gray area for sure. Yeah.
interesting though, like it's just taking it back to the movies though. Why is Obi-Wan making can he just let the dude have his death sticks? Like is that really
Right.
when
Well,
Obi-Wan-
then you have questions of like
Yeah.
how much free will is enough free will.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
When should the
So,
state
like-
intervene?
But again, I guess you could also make the argument though, like maybe he's helping that dude better his life using a Jedi
But
mind trick.
is it his right as an instrument
Right.
of
True.
we'll get into
political
this
authority.
on our episode on Darth Treya. about.
Yeah, but I guess the only people
When
you
helping
see
hurts.
in the actual trilogy use Jedi mind tricks is Luke on the
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, right? Those are the only
I
guys.
think so.
Yeah. Even then, does Luke use a Jedi mind trick?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. He even tries to use it on Jabba. You can see his
Yeah,
his
when he
hand.
waves his hand. Yeah, that's where I was thinking of in that episode.
So
But-
who shot first, the Jedi or the Trade Federation?
Federation.
There are other echoes of A New Hope in this episode.
I mean,
That's-
trying to gas your guess too seems like a very.
It's impolite, but I don't know the Neomoidian culture. You know. How dare you? Anyway, that could be a sign of respect in
Sure.
Neomoidia. You know, they're from Duros originally, I believe.
Nemodians?
Yeah.
They look similar.
Yeah, they're a subspecies, and
Okay.
as we discussed in our xenobiology episode, Duros was poisoned by
Our future to be released xenobiology
Oh,
episode.
that's right. It's not the will of the force. tells us. There's a very great episode on xenobiology that challenges everybody's Latin and Greek pronunciation abilities. Anyway, another echo of A New Hope is that whatever transport the Jedi are on kind of looks in design sort of superficially similar to the Tantive 4, to a blockade runner type freighter. It's obviously smaller in scale, I think.
Yeah.
But it's nice and blocky, and it's got like that
Totally.
The round engines in the back.
the
yeah.
round engines in the back and stuff. And then also you have that sort of ship inside a ship motif of like these are the good guys, and they're the small minority group that's being beat up by
By a
these
bigger-
bad guys who are in this
Yeah.
huge like world
The big and the
ship.
powerful.
I never connected that, but you're totally right.
Yeah.
It's supposed to echo. It rhymes.
Yeah.
That's what I always think now. Whenever I consume any Star Wars media, I just think of George Lucas saying it's supposed to rhyme. And then we also get C-3PO's Hot Silver's sister aboard
TC-14.
TC-14. I'm glad you caught her
Yes,
her
sir.
name. And I mean, at least she seems female. It's hard to tell with droids.
You know, I literally just watched this film and I didn't even catch that it was for some
Yeah,
reason.
like the very first.
yeah, I didn't. No, I know the droid, but I didn't catch that it was like gendered as female.
It has a female sounding voice.
Okay,
as
yeah,
far as
yeah.
a robot voice can sound, male or
sure.
female.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. And I mean, if you think about C-3PO generally, he kind of has
Yeah,
like
it's more male. Yeah,
but it's kind of effeminate
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
androgynous.
Yeah.
Sort of snakes that line as
Totally.
robotic things are wont to do. So she walks by, which brings up something that's interesting, is that C-3PO is sort of billed as a creation of Anakin.
Yeah,
But that protocol droid model very much seems to be in
it's like a
existence.
standard model.
So is C-3PO completely different under the hood than that model?
So I actually looked into this quite a bit, actually, leading up to this episode. So what's actually really cool is George Lucas actually always intended C-3PO to have been built by a child. Like way back in 1977.
Like how he always
this-
intended midi-chlorians.
Well, that's a good point. But in some stuff I was reading about, it was talking about stuff that he had intended in the original trilogies, that C-3PO was always built by a child. And as well, so one of the kind of some of the theories that was going around about it is perhaps like all protocol droids kind of follow a similar like bones, right? And then you can just kind
That
of
makes sense.
Yeah, and then
Maybe
flesh
they're like
them out
then
differently.
they're like
anyone-
smartphones.
Exactly.
Kind of.
Yeah, anyone could kind of like put one
Customize,
together and
yeah.
then custom and give them.
I would almost think like a
personalities or whatever.
vehicle or something.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
sort of the same, like combustion engine
Yeah.
Yeah.
axle.
And
like-
Anakin is known even later on to modify the things he has, right? He gets a standard chip and he modifies
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
to be personalized. So, yeah, I mean, he works in a junkyard. He probably got all the kit together from like,
Watto, just
Yeah.
snake and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
pieces here and there. And
So something else that happens right after we see C-3PO's Hot Silver sister is she comes out of the room where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon were very politely gassed by their hosts. That could have been
Again, not a shot. Not a shot.
That could have been like nitrous. It could have been laughing gas.
Yeah.
or
it very
something.
much was
Just-
not.
just
They
trying to
even
give him a
say that it's
nap.
not. They say it's a hyper.
They're
lethal
tired.
gas.
Anyway, so that opens, and there's whatever battalion of battle droids standing outside of the doors, but the battle droids look like they're literally shaking and scared of what lies in that cloud of laughing gas. And I just thought that seems like a really bad programming thing. Wouldn't that be easy to?
Yeah,
Or am I just reading into that too much to look
No.
to you like the battle droids were literally scared?
I didn't catch that personally.
Yeah, I want to almost save this. I have a whole thing about battle droids.
Oh,
And I
we'll
wanna
get
save
into
for
it in
a
our
battle
droids
droid specific episode.
We're
Yeah,
gonna do it.
because like even through the evolution from episode 1 to episode
Totally.
2 and on, there's a change there that
I think they
would
start
like to discuss
introducing personalities
yes.
to the droids, which I didn't get the sense of in episode 1 personally.
No, I think you missed that. I think there
It
was some
it
character
was very subdued
present.
though. It was very
Yeah,
subdued.
not on the same scale as like in episode 3 though.
No.
No, yeah,
Right,
it's very
where
subdued.
they're like a little more silly, almost goofy
yeah,
kind of
and
droids.
even if you include the Clone Wars series into that,
Totally,
it goes way off
totally,
the rails. And
yeah.
I could spend this whole podcast talking about that specifically, but yeah, they do have personality, which is questionable.
Yeah. Droids are interesting in Star Wars.
Yeah,
They're-
and we will
There's
do
so much good
so
content
many
for
we
droids.
will do a
too.
deep dive into droids.
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. But having an entire droid army is kind of interesting.
Yes.
It sounds like
It talks about the mindless corporate drones. that
Yeah.
work incessantly.
A little bit on the nose with your symbolism there, Georgie.
but it one thing, sorry, as an aside, that's kind of interesting about a droid army is I don't know if like Lucas was being prophetic there, but like since 1999 when the movie was released, even military operations have been conducted largely by like drone warfare, and that's been like a heavy evolution since that.
I wouldn't put that much credit into it. I mean, lots of people talk about fighting robots since the dawn
no,
of-
I know, but
since robots were
No, I know,
created.
but just the idea of like not actually having biological armies, like having like a robotic army, sort of seems like.
I think it just makes sense as
I think anybody who's a creative, especially working in science fiction, just sort of sees that that's obviously a place where the tech is going to go. And I think there are a lot of other things in the first trilogy, for example. I'm sure somebody's written some top 25 list of like technology predictions of Star Wars or something like that. And so I think when you're writing sci-fi, and it's good sci-fi because you read science and other good sci-fi, it's easy to have sort of predictions, quote unquote, come true in real life.
Yeah, if you already see those are the trends that it's going towards. But I think it's more to do with like the Trade Federation is a giant corporation and
Yeah,
they
making
literally
an analogy.
manufacture their soldiers.
Yeah, he was using them as a symbol for corporatocracy. Corporatocracy, is that what it's
Yeah.
called?
or like corporatism.
Yeah.
Kind of to get back to the scenes though, I will say, so I was trying to put when I was watching through the movie, I was trying to put myself into a mindset of like someone who saw it maybe for the first time in theaters or whatever, and I was like, man, that first action sequence is actually pretty sweet to start it off and just have the Jedi whip out their
Have
lightsabers
lightsabers
right away,
drawn
like
that
that
early.
early in the movie. Yeah, you don't see that from
Yeah,
like
you're
episode
not
4 till the end of the movie, right?
And it's barely anything.
Exactly.
like that.
So to have them like kind of almost give that fan service, I thought was pretty cool.
And not just that, but like using their force powers right
Force
away
speed?
too. Yeah, but like jumping from high ledges
Totally,
and stuff
yeah,
like
it's-
that,
it's
and
cool.
using force
We
push.
see Jedi at their max power,
yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, like right away without.
Which is cool though, because in kind of that New Hope trilogy, the original trilogy, you kind of see like you don't see the Jedi at the height of their power
Yeah.
or as a force to be reckoned with, right? So it's cool to just kind of give them that unbridled like ability, you know?
yeah,
and it really shows like this is why the Empire wanted these people gone.
Totally.
Because they're super dangerous.
This is how
Yeah.
powerful they are.
yeah, incredibly dangerous tacticians, but.
Just the kind of people you want to have go into your friendly diplomatic peace missions.
Yeah, you gotta have teeth, right? You can.
Yeah, no one's gonna take you seriously as
Yeah.
a negotiator if you have nothing to back it up with.
Yeah. So
The before they got the laughing gas, which should have calmed them down but didn't. Qui-Gon did one of his many little philosophical riffs where he's talking to Obi-Wan, And Obi-Wan says that Master Yoda says he should be mindful of the future. And then Qui-Gon's response is basically, but don't let it cloud the present moment. And I keep thinking, I don't know if you guys have like read any mindfulness stuff or done any headspace meditation apps, like how on the nose of like Buddhist thought about mindfulness and meditation, a lot of the things
Yeah, and
Yoda
being
and
present.
Qui-Gon say, like it's almost directly from.
It's even present in the original trilogy. Once we get to that point,
Yeah.
when you rewatch it, now that you're kind of aware of it, it'll stand out a lot more.
But that would be a fun future episode, is mindfulness in Star Wars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And the Force speed, I did not catch that the first time I watched these movies.
Really?
I don't think I caught it until this one, because it's really only like 2 frames.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're gone.
It's literally very fast.
It is kind of interesting. I felt like there was like a lot of little just like tidbits that were dropped throughout the movie to just explain to you what the actual capabilities of a Jedi is, you know?
Yeah.
So like the Force run thing, it was just, yeah, you're right. It was just one shot and that's what they could do.
It goes back to the bigger narrative I think Lucas was trying to push. It's like, this is a Jedi at their peak.
Yeah,
right?
totally,
Like,
yeah.
they
My
are-
only issue with that stuff, though, is sometimes you see these powers and they don't ever revisit them in places where it could potentially save
Yeah,
a
that-
certain someone's life, or you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The will of the Force.
Yeah, so I've always
All is
kind
as
of
the Force
I've
wills.
always kind of won, and I have a theory on that.
Yeah, the
whole
Force
side
is
of
evil.
things, but wow, okay.
We have to exterminate all Force users.
That's right. We have to kill the Force itself.
But yeah, that even as a child, I do remember
That'd be a
thinking
cool
like,
faction.
how come there's some powers that are never revisited in this film specifically, and kind of over the overarching. And I mean, like, if you've ever played some of the video games, you get to kind of play with some of those powers introduced in the films or whatever. But
I think it's just a general plot hole that any even in superhero movies, right?
totally,
It's just a convenience contrivance where,
Right.
you know, whatever superpower is convenient for a story point at a time, and then it just doesn't come up again later because there's no need for it. Harry Potter is also especially bad for that with their magic, right? They'll throw out one spell when it's critically necessary, and then they'll forget it even exists.
Yeah.
right.
So I wouldn't blame Star Wars exclusively for that. I think it's a general fiction problem with fiction generally.
Yeah, probably anytime you're dealing with like magic, basically.
Essentially,
Yeah,
yes. And it's hard. I get it. It's hard even for authors to keep track of all the abilities they're giving out.
Yeah.
You know.
And it can just be used as a, I don't know what, like plot armor. Like it can be used as a magic can just explain anything basically.
Yeah.
Or give
Deus
you
Ex
like,
Machina.
what's that?
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
So I was listening to your guys' episode on that earlier, actually, this morning. But I think kind of the thing about the Force is it's so like all encompassing that you can almost get away with those moments. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But
I think if they just did a little bit better of a job of like explaining that there are like Force abilities that you can develop and they take time like to train in and
Yeah.
get skill in, then that could make a little more sense. That
Right.
not everyone can do the same-
everything.
Yeah,
And
do
And they
Right.
also like in the video games, you get an appreciation of this, but like in RPGs, right, when you have magic powers, you only have so much
I was
mana.
just about to say
right?
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
So
Yes.
if I was
literally
just
going here
using
next.
if I was just using force speed for 10 kilometers, I'm not even going to be able to use
Yeah.
Even a force push, yeah.
to like
Yeah. We don't
take
know
a nap or
what-
Yeah,
something.
and
One of the-
we don't
one of
know
the
like
limitations.
what kind of drainage in a combat scenario or any of that.
yeah.
sort
Like,
of
are you
stuff.
concentrating on deflecting blaster bolts? Well, then you can't run. Or,
Here's
you know.
always been one of my kind of thoughts is like, so this has always been, I can't remember if I read this as like a fan theory somewhere or something, but this idea that like Jedi and Sith are actually always using the Force during a battle.
Passively?
And yeah, it's like a
Yes.
passive kind of like almost keeping each other's abilities at bay until they can find an opening to maybe like sneak a push in somewhere or like, you
Yeah,
know what
that'll
I
come
mean?
up. That actually comes up with the duel between Maul and
Yeah,
Obi-Wan
so that's-
and
that's-
Qui-Gon at the end.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that.
Cool.
So then we get some shots of Theed, which I really liked. A lot of the Naboo sort of visual art and their material culture felt
Yeah,
very
yeah.
well developed and fleshed out.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated it. We'll get into it more. For this,
We might as well get into it now.
and sure. And for this part, this is something me and Christian go back and forth a lot about how the prequel trilogies were very much modeled after Greek drama and traditional Greek plays, and then that's obviously being represented in a very literal way.
Yeah, it's
Theed
reinforced.
looks very Roman. What I think a lot of the sets
It was
come
shot in
from
Spain and Italy, but mostly
Spain
Italy.
and Italy.
Yeah.
And the place where Anakin and Padme eventually get married is also some island in Sicily, off the coast of Sicily.
A lot of
or
the
something like that.
architecture and stuff is drawn directly from like romantic Italian architecture.
Yeah, aesthetically it looks really cool.
I do want to quickly put something or like go on a little rabbit trail about the aesthetics. A huge criticism a lot of people have about the prequels is how it doesn't look like the worn out cowboy galaxy.
Oh
of
yeah,
the- of the
it definitely
original
goes away
trilogy.
from
It's
the
a big
like,
departure
from the spaghetti western of
and
the
even in the design of
originals.
this, particularly the Naboo ships, it's
Yeah.
very
But that-
sleek and clean.
I like a more punk rock aesthetic myself as well, but like for me, it just makes Star Wars more of a real place. It makes that galaxy more real. That it's like, Naboo's not some poor
Naboo
backwater.
isn't
But it also-
Tatooine, which isn't Coruscant, and they all kind of have their own.
And to address that criticism as well, the aesthetic makes sense to me because it's after the Galactic Empire comes to power, and then everyone else is like a rebel, right? Like they're outcasts and
it's kind of like post-apocalyptic.
yeah.
almost.
Whereas this is like pre all that. This is like like millennia
A more prosperous galaxy.
Like why would it have that aesthetic,
Yeah.
right? Like whereas it makes more sense like post Galactic Empire, particularly on worlds where they're rebelling against the Empire, right? So to me, I like it doesn't like maybe people just were nostalgic for that, but like it does make sense to not be so much that way.
I think we're all in agreement here that people who think the aesthetics of Phantom Menace are good are just wrong. So let's move on. Your opinions don't matter. Neomoidians, as I said, subspecies.
What a great transition there.
I had some interest.
Segue.
I had a couple thoughts about.
That's a classic
Neomoidians.
screen wipe if I've ever seen one.
I thought we were trying to stay on topic.
Yeah, keep going.
So more visual art though. That's why it's related. Neomoidians, subspecies of Duros, which are kind of like gray aliens in the Star Wars lore. They're one of the earliest species to ever develop hyperspace travel and colonize other planets, and so it makes sense that Neomoidians, given how long and constant their history is, that they would have a trade federation, right? That they would be at the
Such
head.
a well
No way.
established.
I did not know that. I didn't know that.
So
Yeah.
that's a fun bit of lore.
Maybe for people who don't quite know the races, you're referring to the guys at the beginning.
coded the coded Chinese guys, unfortunately.
So I didn't even notice that until I watched it this morning. I was like, oh man, they totally have like Asian accents.
So they are. So there's a lot of that in this.
I'm so tempted to do a Neomoidian quote unquote accent right now.
Is that sort of like in reference? Like I'm trying to think of like the real world reference. Is that like the Silk Road kind of reference of like?
I think it's more modern and is referencing like Chinese trade power.
Yeah.
You know, granted, it's like the 1990s.
I mean, it is-
right?
yeah.
End of the 1990s, but yeah, you're talking about like Newt Gunray and his sidekick there.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
the guys with the
Forget his
bulgy
name.
eyes, long fingers.
Yeah.
So
Like
what I really liked about them was, and I didn't really even notice this at first, was another practical effect. Is they had a very heavily puppeted face, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And contrast that against some other aliens we see that we'll be seeing soon that are mostly CGI. It's like you guys should have stuck with puppets. That looked way better.
Yeah.
And it even, like when you saw the Neomoidians walking next to humans, it's sort of obvious how the costuming worked, that it was like a head on top of a head.
Yeah.
But it ends up making a really awkward, strange, alien-looking body. And it's the same thing with their arms. Like their hands are super long hands, but they're obviously just hands on top of hands. But then with this smaller, regular human-sized torso, it makes them look very
Long and lanky.
long and alien.
So there's actually
gracile, the anatomical term is.
there was one scene I specifically remembered where I noticed that. I was like, holy crow, these guys are actually freakishly tall when they're all walking through Theed and Darth Maul is actually walking next to them. I was like, these guys are like 1.5 feet above Darth Maul, who I would assume would be probably a good sized presence, right?
Yeah, Duros are known to be tall and skinny, and as a
Kind of lanky.
side, as a side of them, the Nemodians would be as well. And like you said, like they are very much modeled after the gray aliens, which is that nod that like they had early space travel, so it could be them visiting us right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Mentality. But no, I agree that that's another big divergence that a lot of people don't like the prequels for is too much CGI versus the classic puppeteering of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And
And
I think,
like models and
yeah,
using real
exactly. It
models.
goes across.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
the
And
whole board.
I'll bring one more nod that the prequels were to the universe that's set up in the sequels. Is you see Duros in Chalmun's cantina on Mos Eisley. They're there.
Yeah,
right?
they're one of the background shot
They're
characters.
just a random background shot, and then essentially that same species we get to see
More
what
fleshed
that
out.
culture
Yeah.
totally fleshed out looks like in
Yeah.
the Duros.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of alien species like, oh, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
in the backgrounds of a lot of shots, which is a consistency that feels familiar for you
Yeah.
revisiting, after so many years of Return of the Jedi, and then it was 1999 that this came out? Yeah, in 1999, returning to the galaxy, right?
Yeah.
And now to contrast those cool aliens, so Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon they're coming down off their nitrous high. They're getting the whoop, 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 whoop in your ears. If you've ever been to the dentist and had a root canal, you know what that means. And they're real cranky, and they want to get away from the droids on the forest floor. And we see some very bad aliens, i.e. Jar Jar Binks. He really stands out.
Bring them out already, hey?
That's where they meet him. There were some cool things about this forest scene. I really liked the music and showing all the landing craft and the hover tanks. And it's again that sort of nature versus the cold corporate machine literally grinding down
Just
nature.
taking out nature.
A little Amazon forest there for you.
That's some pretty fun symbolism.
Yeah, and the Gungans are like basically native Amazonians.
Yeah.
Like
Being pushed out
Or
of their habitat.
Jamaicans.
yeah, or Jamaicans.
That
Who
comes up a
knows?
lot. We'll revisit that as we.
It's
as we
funny
continue.
how things from 20 years ago age.
Like a fine milk.
Although I'm of two minds because about the Gungan culture because obviously I'm not Jamaican, but it's like aside from Jar Jar, everything about the Gungans and actually Boss Nass seems pretty cool. They have
yeah.
they have a pretty intense military. They've got some butt kickers there. They've got some really interesting technology.
Yeah, I think their technology is the most interesting.
Yeah.
But
And they seem very cool. It's just Jar Jar's the only
It's a bad
crappy part.
representative of
It's
them.
not a
So,
good representation.
For me, kind of revisiting it, I was thinking about Jar Jar, and it almost just kind of made me sad. Specifically, honestly, the only note I had written down was Jar Jar's backstory. What a missed opportunity! the way they had him, like just this clumsy oaf. Like it could have been this cool banishment story, and like kind of some of his forced humor. And now one thing though that I think is unfortunately missed with just on the like outside of the universe kind of things for what Jar Jar actually brought to filmmaking as a whole in the industry, and it's actually really sad. But he was actually the first completely CGI main character in a movie ever.
Interesting.
Oh, really?
And it actually like that could have actually been like such
His
a cool
legacy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a legacy that he actually. It's like people kind of just dismiss him because he's Jar Jar, but he actually had a huge impact in filmmaking as a whole. And actually, he's like one of the first characters that they started using motion capture for as
I'm
well.
sure there would be no Smeagol without Jar Jar.
Jar Jar.
Yeah,
Binks.
absolutely. And which
Jar
is-
Jar's like the grandfather of all your favorites.
Which is
no
why
Thanos,
I love
no.
the Darth Jar Jar kind of actually.
We will do a
behind
whole
the
thing on
scenes.
Darth Jar
We'll
Jar.
get into this a little bit more in this episode as well.
Yeah, but it kind of made me sad that they just kind of turned him into because he actually there's
Could have
bones
been,
there
yeah.
that he's totally a could have, should have, would have character where like he could have actually added a lot more to I think the story as a whole, other than forced humor and a little bit of aged CG. But yeah.
I think Jar Jar's character was like a total flop. I think any objective
Also, people get a
person.
little ridiculous in how much they hate Jar Jar, though. I will
don't
go
know.
on a limb
It's
to defend
pretty
him.
bad.
It's pretty
Yes,
bad.
I agree. Like, honestly,
Even watching it again,
I was
like,
watching
oh,
it and I was
man.
thinking, and I was like, man, I bet you could honestly just remove all of Jar Jar's scenes from the movie, and I feel like
could get
not a whole lot would be affected in
Yeah.
terms of pushing the plot forward.
Well, they needed to like introduce the Gungans and stuff. With
Yeah.
him, so but
And a big thing too is Lucas always said he introduced Jar Jar for the kids.
For the kids,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
But even
yeah.
as a kid, because I was a kid when this came out, I did not like Jar Jar.
Yeah.
I just want that to be very clear.
yeah, I don't remember it being like super.
Yeah.
I mean, I was probably 10 or 11 when it came out, but yeah, I don't remember it being super impressive.
Attached to him,
Yeah,
no, not at all, right?
Yeah.
you know,
like to me, it was like Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul are the coolest guys.
Yeah.
So
two points kind of while we're talking about Gungans here and that were already previously brought up. The interesting thing that when you compared the Gungans to like Amazonians and being like, you know, steamrollered by the Trade Federation, there is an interesting dynamic too there between the local Naboo and ideas of like it's not just the Trade Federation that's pushing at the Gungans.
Colonialism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there is a whole. It's not. They reference it very loosely in the story.
yeah,
but
we don't really totally. I'm sure there's like outside material, but
Yes,
we don't.
there is,
Yeah, we
and
don't
that's-
totally know from the movie exactly the relation. We just
Yeah.
know there's a strained relationship.
yeah,
Between
it looks strained for some
Yeah.
reason. We don't know exactly why, and there is that whole like idea of like, you know, colonialism and Native American culture.
I think it was like so. Boss Nass in one scene like sort of made reference to Queen Amidala humbling herself to the Gungans, and he sort of I can't remember, but something to the effect of like, oh, you're not like
You don't see
trying to
yourself bigger.
be seeing yourself as better than us, right? So that must be the dynamic that is
They-
at play. Like,
yeah.
so who knows what exactly?
Yeah, and there are obviously very racially segregated cultures. Right?
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
see any Gungans in Theed, and you don't see any
Well, I
humans
thi-
with the Gungans.
Well, I think just by mere fact that Gungans like
live
to be
underwater.
in the water.
yeah,
It's like-
there very much could be biological reasons.
Yeah,
for
it's
it,
not
but-
necessarily like a.
There,
like
but if you dig into the
a stigma,
actual
yeah.
the lore, there is a very strange relationship between humans and Gungans on Naboo.
okay,
And a lot of that comes from outside material, but it is loosely
Yeah, yeah.
referenced. And then the other thing we might as well hit the nail on the head with the racial coding thing,
Yeah.
because it does keep coming up,
yeah,
and it is a criticism of modern audiences of
the
episode one.
yeah,
One, I just want to say that I think Lucas was just making real life references in a lot of cases. Like with the Trade Federation, he was referencing China, I believe.
Yeah.
So his whole political, like it was more political than it was racial in that sense. There are other ones that come up that are definitely like raise some eyebrows for sure.
And I mean, there's a whole side quest you could go on about myths of like other cultures, particularly enemy cultures, being represented in very grotesque, caricatured ways.
yeah.
Of like, you know, strange tales of like Africans who are gigantic and have no head, but their face is in their stomach, and they eat people, and all these kinds of crazy monsters that people invent about other cultures, and that's how they're represented. And then when you do that again on screen, but you're just translating Chinese into these alien duros, those
Nemodians. But.
yeah, those lines start to get blurred a little bit. You're
Yeah.
like, what are we? But in his defense, I will say that's the only cultures we have for references are human cultures when we're talking about trying to
And that's the other
create
thing I was going to say is
an alien civilization.
But-
It's going to look like a human civilization.
and by that same, you know, like the Naboo, like you said, they reference a lot of Italian and Renaissance architecture
Yeah.
and things. So it was, you know, translating what's supposed to be something different, and especially Star Wars being largely, at least until recently, marketed to Western audiences,
Yeah.
trying to say, oh, this is a different culture, and then referencing, like you said, a human culture that they're just trying to
I would
overlay on that mask.
I would say it's fair to say it's like a negative stereotype that was represented. And I wouldn't go so far as to say it was racist. I just think it was like maybe a negative stereotype represented.
Well,
that wasn't necessarily.
It's case by case.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
There's only really like 3 Gungan characters that we actually meet. There's Jar Jar, Boss Nass,
and that general.
and that
Tarpals.
general
Yeah,
guy.
Captain
General
Carpals.
Carpals.
Carpals,
Yeah.
yeah.
Carpals.
And he seems legit.
Like
Captain
he's
Marvel's is dope. His mustache
He's
is
like
sweet.
competent. Yeah.
But Boss Nass and Jar Jar kind of seem like buffoons.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing too,
And
actually,
the Neimoidians seem like cowards, like
Yeah.
spineless
Yeah.
worms, right?
yeah,
Yeah. They only care about profit and what.
yeah, and are they scared of danger?
Do you
That's why they have
do you think
robots
it's
do their
fair
dirty
to
work.
say though that perhaps like it wasn't necessarily intended?
In
to
some
be
cases, there
that way?
were. Like definitely, like I think with the Trade Federation, he's referencing China. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
It
so
does
too.
seem
I
that
think
way,
that
yeah.
that one for sure.
There's
That
also
one, yeah.
there is also the other thing I'm going to say too is actors, right? The actor that actually portrayed Jar Jar was a Jamaican actor.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Did
So
he,
Ahmed
did he do
is-
the voice?
Ahmed Best.
Ahmed Best. I'm not
I
sure if
believe-
he's actually. I thought he was from the UK. Again, fact
I
check
could be
me
wrong.
on that.
Well, he could be like Jamaican.
Oh, he was born in New York, but
Oh,
I don't know
okay,
what
so
his, I don't know what his
everyone is
ancestry
equally
is,
wrong.
But he provided the voice for Jar Jar regardless.
Yeah.
And so whatever inflection or caricature that, maybe it was at Lucas's direction or whoever was in charge of that. So I'm just reading his background while I'm speaking at the same time. It's kind of difficult.
I will say though. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
For me, though, I mean, this discussion is part of the meta story of Star Wars, but who
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
what an author's specific intent when he was
For
writing
sure,
a specific
totally.
thing was.
That's a good point.
How much do I really care? The answer is I don't really care. If it's racist, that's bad for him, I guess. And it's not inspiring me to be racist. I don't think it should inspire you to be racist.
Oh, jeez, I was getting real close. There.
I don't know if anybody was watching science fiction.
I don't know. I hate
movies.
Jar Jar a lot, man.
Yeah.
Can I be racist against Gungans?
I've been reading The Republic by Plato recently, and I'm in the section where he's outlining the kinds of literature people in his perfect society should be consuming, and Star Wars definitely wouldn't make the cut. But anyway, to get back to the film, Gungan City, pretty cool conceptually. These giant bubbles with these like semi-permeable force fields is like a really far out there kind of sci-fi idea, I think.
Yeah, the Gungans kind of as a whole. To me, it was like good and bad. Like I said, I like the tech. Didn't love like the character portrayals of them, but it is what it is.
And here the green screens to me start to get really loud. It's like when he's talking to Boss Nass and stuff, like it really looks like you're just on a soundstage.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to Greek drama again. They should have just gone the whole Greek drama route and just done it on a stage with no props at all. That would have been more realistic.
And speak to the camera as the audience.
My mind's eye would have come up with something
With
better.
lots of these and thous.
That's right.
So, in
That's
defense,
not Greek
in defense
drama,
of
though,
George,
Jordan. That's British.
In defense of George in this whole, because I mean, when you look back at kind of just the prequels as a whole, that's like you kind of get these. There's really similar themes that people are upset with him, and one of those being the blatant overuse of CG. But in his defense on that part, I almost respect the risk he's taking in trying to push the boundaries of what computers can do at that time.
I absolutely agree with you. It's like
Because and here's one of my things is that there is actually some CG in the movie that is actually pretty good. Like I know we're skipping kind of ahead here perhaps, and I'm sure we're gonna get to it at some point, but the pod racing is like the CG in the pod racing is freaking believable. Even today, like I was looking back and I was like, man, the CG and the green screens almost don't line up, which is
weird.
So I like sometimes I wonder like were they on like a time constraint and they just rush some of this stuff and they're like, oh, people just might not notice, right?
Well, George Lucas being who he is and growing up in the time he grew up, I'm sure one of his favorite films is Spartacus, which has a very legendary chariot racing scene.
Right.
So I'm sure the pod racing.
It was
thing-
definitely inspired by chariot racing.
I think you mean Ben-Hur.
Is it Ben-Hur?
Yeah, Ben-Hur
Ben-Hur.
has a chariot race.
Ben-Hur
Yeah.
has a chariot race. Right.
But-
But I think like he probably was planning that scene for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like-
So that's what I'm saying though is it's almost unfortunate that some of the really good CG gets passed over by some of the actually like pretty.
Whenever you're
aged
dating,
CG.
whenever you're dating old movies, like
Yeah.
CG is always going to be a questionable.
I think
period.
it holds up. I'm
You
just
got to
looking-
compare it to what was out at the
Yeah,
time.
it's just
because
relative.
comparing it to today
Totally.
is always like,
Totally.
well, of course things are going to be better today.
Yeah, I mean, like
It's not a fair
right
comparison.
after that, like a year after that movie came out, The Matrix came out, right? And that
Yeah.
was pretty revolutionary, but they didn't use nearly as much.
Yeah, and
right?
to me, it's the green screens. Some of the
That's-
green screens are just like, why are you using a green screen there? Like, just use it. Like when they get
Like,
to
build a
Tatooine
real
eventually.
set?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
get to Tatooine and they've got real sets at that point. And I'm like, that looks great. Practical effects are
And
awesome. Don't
and the
move
space
away
battles
from them.
look great.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some CG where it's like, that really holds up till today. And then it's just the blatant green screen. Sometimes I'm like, oh, another one.
Again in defense of Lucas, like you said, he was always pushing the film industry.
Yeah.
Back in the day, he was pushing it with the models. Now he's
Yeah.
pushing it with the CG.
And so that's a
technology.
credit
So,
I like to give
yeah,
to him.
to
too.
him, it just means he's a trailblazer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I think sometimes that gets missed in some people's like hate of him. And what
it
I almost
wasn't. I agree, it was overdone. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
but like I think it is a fair point that he was sort of pushing the envelope with
Yeah,
what
and
could
watch
be done.
modern. This was a big thing for me. Like watch modern movies.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Watch the Avengers.
Yeah,
How much
watch
CG
any
do they use?
MCU.
See people complain
it's
about.
just
oh, there's-
better though.
I
so
do.
it's,
That's
it
why I
doesn't
haven't
hold up.
watched a superhero movie in like 15 years.
I only watch movies that came out 1960s or earlier.
But yeah, I think sometimes the credit is due that maybe sometimes he doesn't get.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think so a lot of the kind of the backstory and I was watching a lot of like the making ofs and stuff, and he was kind of like, yeah, like I'm genuinely making a movie I want to make. He kind of didn't care what other people told him to do and just literally took risks. And sometimes they worked, like in the first trilogy.
Yeah.
And sometimes they
Did not
not
work.
so much.
So then some other cool things after getting the, what's it called? The bongo? Is that what he called their submarine?
Yeah, something like I don't
A
remember.
bongo or
Yeah.
something.
I think that's what it's called.
So we get a whole bunch more cool or I think they call them Nubian actually.
Yeah.
If you're from Naboo, you're Nubian. So we get a bunch of Nubian marine life, which is fun. There's
That scene was unnecessary.
what scene?
Going through the planet core,
It's
through
all
the
that-
water.
So the planet core thing I thought was a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a runtime and just like having
no, you're
fish
gonna
eat
go
each
through
other.
a planet's core.
Yeah, like
how
it's
long did this take you for
it's
one?
Cool, but it's all, and that one I think it was totally just like a CG flex. Like now we have CG
Absolutely.
monsters
and
like,
an adventure.
But here's
Yeah.
some
I
cool
know
CG
I know they're
monsters, though.
using it for like some flair, but I couldn't get over the going through a planet's core. Like
really messes with you.
yeah, it's the science behind it.
Was there any like molten lava?
No,
or anything?
no,
No,
it was
hold
all
on,
water.
Hold on. You need to know about the planet Naboo first of all. Naboo is known to be super porous and have lots of under the
Underwater
surface
channels.
water channels.
Yeah.
But the center, it has to have like some kind of center of mass, right?
So my thought on that as I explaining that away was kind of like maybe they call it the core, but it's not actually
Or you
the
like
core.
you're not transitioning straight through because the other thing is gravity. Once you hit the middle of the core, would you just like float and then get to the other side and then gravity really
But the thing is, the force of the reason why it's hot in a core is because the
All
force
the
of
pressure,
gravity,
yes,
is
is-
pulling it in.
Yes.
So like, there's no way that there could be gravity on a planet without like a molten core.
No, I don't think that's true. I think
Maybe it's an ice core.
because there are planets without molten
Yeah,
cores.
those planets.
Even
Well-
technically, our core may or may not be molten. I think it's a solid core surrounded by a molten.
Well,
layer.
whatever the case may be, like there has to be like a pretty large.
there would be a lot of
mass.
pressure and there'd be a lot of heat. Is the two things. Whatever
Yeah.
that heat looked like
Sure.
could
Okay. heat.
incinerate you or kill you, or like with the water
But going
vaporize at the
why you
core.
need a
I don't
bongo.
know. Right, but you can explain that away with technology. Is exactly what I was going to say.
Could you?
The other thing I was going to say is maybe they dip into the core in a U shape instead of going through.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or
They
like
go-
I said,
they
they
go
probably
down.
don't
Maybe,
go
but-
through it. They
but
call
the
it
other
the
th-
core, but it's like
Yeah.
The other thing is, even in like a very fast submarine, that would take you like days.
Unless it had a
Unless they-
hyperdrive.
Unless
hyperdrive
there's some-
underwater.
Unless we didn't really see how long Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon spent swimming to Gungan City. So
I
maybe
will say they got there quickly.
maybe they skin dived like,
Yeah.
10 kilometers under
Well, the other thing
the
about that,
ocean.
them swimming to the bottom is just water pressure too. Like
I wondered about that.
You'd probably get like
they're
if you
Jedi.
didn't have a suit. Yeah, I know, but that
Force bubbles?
I think the
Force
largest
pressurization?
I think the deepest skin dive is over a kilometer
is it?
underwater.
Okay.
I do think I'm gonna like it's weird. Like in one shot they're at like clearly a lake, like
Yeah,
a very
I know.
clear, and the next scene they're like at the bottom of what looks like an ocean.
But
Yeah,
that's part of
I'm
Naboo's
guessing it's-
geology.
Yeah,
though.
I'm guessing it's just like underwater or under there's huge underwater lakes.
That's literally what it is.
In like the
they have
Yucatan
Okay.
they have
Peninsula.
cross sections of Naboo that
Okay.
show
Oh,
like
that's cool.
how porous the surface is and these massive bodies of water. underneath.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
That's
very
cool.
water heavy, but it's hidden.
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
they have so many swamplands, and that's just the surface you're seeing, and lakes.
Yeah.
But if you go underneath, there's just like channels and like massive like ocean-sized channels.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, moving along.
I've been spending a lot of time with the biology of Star Wars, so this was really screaming at me in this scene. Was one of the many things that tries to kill their bongo. At first, like it's just all head and tooth, and I think it's like an anglerfish type
Yeah.
thing. But then I see that it's got a segmented body and it's got 6 little legs, and it's actually some kind of crustacean. So that was fun. How like at first you think it's one type of animal, and then it reveals itself to be something completely different.
Yeah.
Morphologically. But what it gets eaten by, Qui-Gon says there's always a bigger fish. But
Yeah.
that's clearly not a fish that eats the crustacean. It's obviously a marine reptile. And that is quite different from fish evolutionarily. That's like plesiosaurs and that kind of thing. Those are marine reptiles. And that's the kind of animal that,
Well, I think
that ate it. So
I think he was just like making a.
Actually, Sam, I'm reading the page of the Sando aqua monster, and it is actually a mammal.
Oh, really? Still not a fish.
Yeah.
And now we're being pedantic.
Yeah. Seriously. Okay.
I hate episode 1. Their fish marine biology is all wrong.
So I liked it before I put my faith in Qui-Gon's science when he talked about
Metachlorians. Maybe made metachlorians up.
midi-chlorians and life being around every star, but now because of that fish comment.
You can't trust anything
I
he
can't
says.
trust anything he says. So just lots of fun marine megafauna in that scene. And also are they Eopes? Is that the mounts that the Gungans ride? And then they have those huge like Oliphant things that carry their shield generators. Those are a lot of fun. I noticed a tiny cotter of gray droids on the Neimoidian ship, or on the Trade Federation ship at one point. I don't think I've ever seen those droids before or since. They're not pit droids. I don't know if you guys know anything about them.
I didn't catch that.
Just one of those many fun, if you blink, you miss it kind of details that's all throughout the Star Wars franchise. And then we get to see Goth Queen Amidala. She's in her nice black dress with black feathers, like a crow, talking to some Neimoidians about how subjugated and oppressed her people are.
Yeah,
She's
that's
very
her-
sad.
It's a mourning outfit.
Exactly. I like that. She's the patron saint of all goths, because she also falls in love with the romantic bad boy, of course, Anakin Skywalker. So that's good.
I was kind of thinking like a geisha almost.
Yeah,
Like
when
a-
we talked about the historical
very-
references of Star
yeah.
Wars, that's where Lucas drew a lot of her design from.
Yeah.
But Sam, I think, is referencing specifically to her dark outfit
Okay.
from her sad period. Her,
Kind of like how Queen Victoria mourned what's his name for the rest of her life or something. She always dressed in black after he died.
Yeah.
I do think that's actually it, though. She's mourning the loss of liberty
Yeah.
of her people, and because all her other outfits are very bright.
But I'm glad you brought up the geisha thing, though, in terms of there's sort of a mixture in the Nubian culture between that sort of Italian Renaissance and Japanese elements. I think some of the Nubian soldiers are very reminiscent of samurai.
Yeah, they kind of have a samurai aesthetic.
They have like the sort of the pauldrons and sort of the down-facing triangle, and their helmets are even kind of
Flared out.
flared like a traditional samurai helmet.
Yeah, and on the Renaissance front, a lot of the civilians are dressed in like buttoned, flurally.
Palpatine, for example, you can almost miss the detail that Palpatine is also Nubian. Like Naboo,
Yeah.
Naboo's
He dresses like
He's
from
the
Naboo.
senator from Naboo.
I totally as a kid.
that totally flew over my head.
Yeah,
too.
full transparency. I used to just fast forward all the politics scenes and cut right to the action scenes
to the
in
laser swords.
episode 1. But yeah, that's like a ton of stuff that I was like, oh, that's crazy. I never picked up
And
on
just
that.
to touch on that too, is this is something I actually did really like about the Phantom Menace was it was a way more complex political story.
Totally.
Than like the original trilogy, you know. And
Empire bad,
what's
Rebels
that?
good. Empire bad, Rebels good.
Yeah, there was still that, but I thought it said it because I like more like universe expanding stuff. Like to me, that's the kind of stuff that I really like. I don't like. I can forgive a lot of things. Like I can forgive a Jar Jar Binks and stuff if it has like kind of cool Machiavellian plays from like Palpatine and stuff like that, right?
Totally.
Like. I just thought it was cool. It's kind of cool. Like, oh, there's this like galactic senate, and there's this like political bureaucratic class that they're not getting anything done, and it sort of like feels like very real world politics in a lot of ways.
Which was entirely what Lucas was.
It was very
portray.
intentional. Yeah. But it's just kind of it makes it in some ways it makes the whole setup like very much more believable from what was happening. So
And I really like the world building they did too around hats in the Phantom Menace. I could do a whole podcast on hats,
like Newt Gunray's hat.
Newt Gunray's hat, his friend's hat, Boss Nass's weird conch shell hat, all of Amidala's crazy headwears, Obi-Wan's ridiculous Jedi braid. How crazy would it be to have a braid that long but a crew cut?
So
if there's any fans who've sported such a hairstyle, please share it with us.
One is sitting right here.
How long was it though? Was it 18 inches?
No, it wasn't. That
in high school, Christian had, was it a mohawk?
a mohawk on top and a Jedi braid on
Yeah.
behind my
that
ear.
is to this day my favorite. I'm pretty sure you deleted most of the photos of it.
There's got to be one floating
There's
around
some
But
floating around
was it
somewhere.
like 18 inches? Because
No,
that's,
it wasn't that.
that's
nowhere
the
near.
braid
Yeah.
Obi-Wan rocks. And I like that. And
No, but he's paying homage to Obi-Wan with
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
his
All
braids.
that time, yeah.
I think lasted like 3 weeks,
Wasn't
if
long.
that.
Anakin's pod racer helmet, the hats that the Jedi that the Naboo starfighters wear are pretty cool. Of course, not technically hats, but Darth Sidious and Darth Maul with their hoods,
Their cowls, yeah.
very
What
shrouded.
about Darth
at
Maul's
first.
horns?
And I was gonna bring up Darth Maul's horns, kind of like a crown, crown of thorns, kind of playing on that devil imagery. I think Darth Maul was in part created just to sell Halloween costumes, because that was a summer release, of course, and so obviously that had to have been the highest selling Halloween costume that year was Darth Maul. So anyway, hats. Your guys' thoughts on hats in Phantom Menace? Yay or nay? You like them?
I have no real thoughts.
We'll ask the audience to send their feedback if they wanted a whole episode of Sam talking about hats.
I could do a hats cast.
Hats and helmets.
I think is it at that point or pretty close to then since we're on the topic of Maul, that he appears pretty
Around
around
here.
that time.
Yeah. He appears in holographic form.
Yeah,
next
behind
to Darth
Sidious.
I'm sending
And
my
I just
apprentice.
to me, one of the things that kind of in rewatching it all, just the difference in the introduction of Darth Maul versus the introduction of a Kylo Ren, who is to this day, for me personally, Kylo Ren.
Who?
Ben Swallow.
Yes, my most
Ben
hated
Solo.
Swallow.
my most hated Star Wars character in the entire franchise, for me personally.
Who?
But just how menacing and how imposing Darth Maul feels in one shot, and like he's clearly introduced as the bad guy. There's some fear to him. Clearly, some training has gone into him. And
I was about to. I'll complete this thought. Sorry, but it adds on to what you were saying.
Be my guest.
The yellow eyes of the Sith, right? So the first time we see that is in
Darth Maul, yeah.
No, is it?
Did Sidious have red eyes?
Yellow eyes. When the lightsabers cross and he's sitting on the
front of
throne,
him,
his
yeah.
eyes open up and he's got full on yellow
And
eyes.
so that's another cool callback to the
Return of the Jedi.
To the design,
Yeah.
the visual design of previous movies is Darth Maul. We get to see those Sith eyes again.
He's so freaking cool.
He's very cool.
He is, yeah, so cool.
Mm-hmm. And so, so I'm always confused about the whole Padme handmaiden switcheroo, the whole Parent Trap thing.
I got a very good, cool story for you.
But part of it is her voice. Like, it seems like in the first scenes, Queen Amidala's like voice is like she has a different accent in every scene almost. And then once she's revealed as Padme Amidala, it gets a little bit more normalized. But then it sort of makes sense because we see in real life, like Queen Elizabeth very much has a queen voice that I don't imagine she talks to her kids in. And when Amidala's addressing...
Like a public voice and then a private voice. Yes.
When she's addressing the public, she has also... Or like the Republic Senate, rather. She has that very stilted... Again, weird, like it almost sounds South African sometimes. And
I get that
sometimes
vibe
it's
too,
British.
yeah.
And sometimes it's Kiwi, kind of. Like, I don't know what is going on with it.
So, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up. So I'm going to connect that idea to a big, broad idea of the acting in Star Wars. And there's a lot of trivia that's tied to this, which is actually very cool. First thing, the whole interplay between Padme and her handmaiden. They are two different actresses.
Yeah.
Right.
One of which is Keira Knightley. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, Keira Knightley is the decoy.
Is the decoy.
Yeah.
And Keira Knightley is British.
Right.
Yeah.
So that might be that coming through.
Yeah.
Because...
But then the accent, like, I'll use my reference as Amidala to the Senate. Like, I don't think is that a British accent?
That was Keira Knightley, though.
But here's the thing. We don't know who was who in what scenes. And Keira Knightley doesn't even remember who she was in what
Exactly.
scene.
That's my thing.
So cool.
I think it's
That
all
is so
jumbled
cool.
up.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know either. I honestly cannot tell you.
That's so cool.
I swore it was Keira Knightley.
Their own mothers mix them up on set.
That just
They
means they
look
did
that
such a good
similar.
job that like
Yes.
they even fooled us and themselves.
Right. And
like,
so
that
even-
is so
when
awesome.
when they're both without makeup, you can tell the difference.
But in that movie, shot for shot, do you know which shots are man, I keep thinking Padme.
I
don't
feel
know the
like
actress's
I feel
name.
like I maybe I have to like
Natalie Portman.
go back, but I feel like until she was like actually revealed, Natalie Portman was she was just like the handmaiden
The whole time.
Yeah, the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be.
No.
what it was.
The one
But do
scene
you
where
know that?
Anakin goes on Coruscant to speak to Padme, and they're like, "Oh, Padme's run an errand."
Right.
She's totally.
Oh, is that
She's
Natalie?
that's totally Padme in Queen Amidala's. So I think she does address the Senate
Oh, okay.
because
maybe
when
I'm wrong.
Anakin moves to go to the Jedi temple and he's not sure if he'll ever see her again.
Christian,
Yeah,
why
yeah.
didn't you bring the whiteboard?
I honestly can't tell, man. Yeah.
Yeah, they just didn't make it that clear, but you might be right about that. Yeah.
Are they switching back and forth? Or
Yeah.
are they consistently segregated roles until the
Yeah,
very
yeah.
end and they
Yeah,
switch
yeah.
back? I really don't know, and I can't say.
I personally had no issue with
But
that.
I think that has
I
something
thought
to
it
do
was
with
cool.
what you're pointing out about how the voice changes. Is
Yeah.
that they're not even like
The same
they're
person?
literally different people.
Yeah, maybe they are. It's very fluid on
Yeah.
when who's who.
And they were both actually very young actresses.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
At the
They're
time.
14.
Yeah,
think.
which I didn't
Yeah.
realize because in my mind, Natalie Portman's always.
How
Yeah,
old
yeah.
was Padme supposed
14.
to be?
14,
Supposed
yeah.
to be 14.
Anakin's 9 and she's 14.
Which that age gap isn't that crazy if you think
Yeah.
about it. My
If you-
wife is got
Yeah.
a similar age gap to me. I did not model my life based.
Did you meet when you were 9 and 14?
No, we did not. Yes.
actually,
Which
at the
is
start
like
of-
another
so-
sorry.
Go ahead.
just George Lucas and his weird sexual relationships.
That's what I was going to bring up. But
Incest and
here's how this is
pedastry.
Yes. Here's how this is canon Star Wars, though. Like that Greek drama thing. What happens in Greek drama? Incest. What happens in the first Star Wars? Incest. And
Now you're officially reading too much into
and
it.
the incest doesn't really get started in both of them until the second movie.
It rhymes.
It rhymes.
Anyways, I digress.
Anyways, tying it back to that whole broader picture, a lot of criticism too leveled at this movie is the acting, particularly child acting. We all know Jake Lloyd's often, took a lot of flack in his
That
youth.
is not fair.
I didn't think he definitely had some cringy lines for sure.
Yeah, I thought his lines were
It's
more
the writing
terrible
than the
It's
actual
the
zero.
writing than
But
the
I
actor.
didn't think he was that. Just watching it again, and for like a 5-year-old, man, he was like
He was
very.
not 5.
He wasn't 5.
Well,
he
he
was
looked
8 or
Also
9.
was 8 or 9.
What?
Yeah,
he looks
yeah.
like a tiny little
He
kid.
looks like
Yeah.
he's freaking
just
five.
a little boy.
Yeah, I think his performance is
What you'd
it's
expect
fine.
from a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
I
I
doubt
probably-
I would have done
yeah.
any better in the same scenario.
no way. I could barely read when I was 9.
You can still barely read that.
Yeah.
But also drawing that back to people like when I saw Amidala and stuff acting, I was like, that doesn't like Natalie Portman, I believe, is an Oscar-winning actress. Keira Knightley's held her own and been nominated for a couple actors. They're good, talented actresses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even in
Liam
that,
Neeson.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
all Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
They're all really talented actors and actresses. So any like criticisms of the acting of Episode 1, I think goes
Chalk
back
it up to the writing.
To the
to
writing
writing
and
and
the direction.
direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same thing could be said. Hayden Christensen too. He gets a lot of flack for his portrayal of Anakin, but he acts in other shows, and he's a pretty decent actor himself.
Man, I'm gonna defend him. Hayden Christensen did a good job portraying Anakin.
But again,
Yeah.
it goes
Honest-
back to the
I-
lines and the direction.
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think he portrayed that. That's
I don't
what
know.
I,
We'll get
yeah,
that
I
into
would
2
love
and 3
to.
episode,
Yeah, I would love.
But it just kind of ties back to the
love me some Hayden.
the direction.
He really portrayed the exact
angst,
kind of
yeah.
incel neck beard I would expect to be responsible for genocide.
Wow.
So then the Jedi steal a Nubian freighter, and it gets shot up by some battle droids in space, and we get some hot astromech action. R2-D2 and all his friends go out to the outer hull and start repairing stuff. And that's another cool bit of world building. We get to see how universal these like R2 units are on spaceships and what exactly they do, other than like provide little chirps and squawks in the background.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Then we go to Tatooine. We, of course, get some Sith foreshadowing. And then, one of the brilliantly written lines, are you an angel?
Oh, that was so terrible.
Yeah, that's. There's no saving that one.
But to follow up with that, there was some interesting world building, is that angels are apparently something that myths are talked about in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And he even name checks a planet. Did anybody do any research on
The moons of Bogdan.
the moons of, was it Bogdan or Iago? I heard Iago.
Oh, Iago, yeah.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah. No, you're right.
But I don't know if angels play a big part in any sort of EU background stuff. But that was interesting. And I remember thinking, even when I first heard that line, I was like, that first line was awful. It made me want to die when I'm 9 of embarrassment. But the follow up, I want to know about the moons of Iago and what the spacers are telling young Annie about.
Here's the
And
thing.
why are they hanging out with this young boy?
Here's something
Shmi,
though.
by the way, I'm gonna get into Shmi.
So
Boy, she's not a good mom.
I wonder though, is he portraying that kind of like just that curious 9-year-old kid, that very forward, just
Says things
inquisitive, doesn't really,
inappropriately timed.
just inappropriately forward is the only way to think. Now I will say, at 9, he had far more game than I did at 9 years
Hitting
old.
on chicks,
yeah, way out of his league.
Oh yeah.
But
He like goes to her apartment later on. Like, he's like, yo baby. I'm gonna be gone for a while, but when I get back, you and me, it's on.
But yeah, I wonder if kind of, and maybe it was missed in, again, chalked up to some of the writing, but maybe the angle they were going for that it just didn't quite hit the mark on was that inquisitive kind of little boy who's just gonna very forward. You know what I mean?
So Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon get some space ponchos somewhere. I don't know. They're the only people who are wearing those ponchos.
just gonna gloss right over that one. All right, that idea ended right there. There's another one of those classic.
I want to talk about ponchos.
Green wipes.
You're all about the clothing of
You should
Star
just
Wars.
have an offshoot where you just discuss costume design in the Star Wars universe.
There will be an episode on that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Well, it does seem, the continuity seems weird to me because none of the other people from Naboo have the ponchos, but Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon very clearly only have their robes, which are not ponchos when they're on Naboo, and then they have these ponchos.
I think that poncho
on
is so sick.
Tatooine.
Qui-Gon's poncho is so sweet.
I love the Jedi ponchos.
Do you want to know that it's a callback? to-
Where'd they come from?
Luke had a poncho on Tatooine.
Did he?
Yeah. So I imagine it's a local thing that they're putting on to try and blend in with the local culture. Boom, world building right there.
Done.
Okay, let's keep moving.
But there's a crazy no-neck alien with really janky teeth, and he's like pink and has these crazy black eyes. Also, mostly puppets. In Tatooine, I remember he just stuck out to me as a particular monstrosity. That was like, that's a great alien right there. Not CGI'd.
Mm-hmm.
He was fun. And then when Annie brings Qui-Gon back and the other strangers from outer space back to his house, Shmi does not seem perturbed. This isn't strange to her at all that her young son brings a bunch of weirdos back to her place. And then we also see in Annie's room a lacrosse stick and a high-ally scoop, I believe, which are two very dangerous sports, which Shmi allows Anakin to play. In addition to pod racing, in addition to losing her and her son gambling, that's why they're slaves. She gambled them into slavery.
No. I don't think that's what happened.
That's what Annie said.
His mom lost them in
Yeah.
gambling? No, I thought they were already slaves and that they were lost as property
No.
in a gambling match.
I'm pretty sure.
It was her.
I'm pretty sure Christians.
No. they
That's
were-
what I got. At no point did I think that
Google it.
Shmi was
She
an
gambled
addict gambler.
themselves into
Pretty
Yeah.
sure-
slavery.
I'm pretty sure she did.
Pretty sure you're wrong.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Everyone
Anyway,
starts
while you guys
fact checking
prove-
this.
While you guys prove me right, Anakin, another problem with him is I think he's ludicrously OP'd. I don't care how many midi-chlorians he has. Him winning that pod race at 9 years old, insane. Him destroying the battle station in a
So-
ship he's never flown before.
So it says Shmi was sold into slavery at an early age in 41 BBY.
Interesting.
So before Anakin was
What's
even
the line
born.
from the script then?
So they were previously owned and they were lost, I believe, to
In a
Watto
bed.
and a
Yeah,
bed.
she was already a slave, and then she gave birth to
Anakin
Anakin
in servitude.
which he would have been born into servitude.
Yeah.
I'm guessing
So,
is
yeah, they were lost and traded as property, not
Yeah.
she gambled herself and her son into property.
Well, stay tuned in the ongoing segment of Sam's right and everyone else on this podcast is wrong.
including the writer and director of Star Wars.
I will find the line that justifies what I said, but we're running long already, so I'll keep things
Just
moving.
quickly to run back to Padme. She actually says a really interesting. I think it's actually really cool for her character. At the discussion at the dinner table, where you kind of see this this trust in the Republic when there's when she's just blown away by slavery as a
She's
whole.
naive.
Yeah, very naive at that point. And honestly, I love Padme's character arc throughout the entire prequel series to episode 3. She literally says my favorite line in the entire prequels.
This is how Liberty dies.
This is how Liberty dies with thunderous applause. I think it's such a cool. You introduce that just unrelenting faith in the Republic and what they can do, and you almost start to see it crumble right there at the Senate meeting when she's trying to gain all of the support. And I think it's just a really interesting character development. It's kind of a journey that she goes on that
This night-
I appreciate
Yeah.
it for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good insight.
So then at the pod racing track after that scene, we get some more gambling. And this is an interesting thing. Christian made me think about this as we were working on a script for another episode today. Is that, was there really a reason for Qui-Gon to let Anakin like very clearly risk his life? You know,
I think that's kind of explained just by like, sorry, excuse me, by like the, like Qui-Gon has a very strong sense that like he has like a destiny, and
That's
there's
true.
a destiny in the Force, and so I think he's like very much like, he doesn't believe in chance, that nothing happens by accident, and so these circumstances are the way they are because the Force wills it. And
So if Anakin died in a horrible pod racing accident,
it's as the Force
he
wills
could
it.
he could be that deterministic.
it's possible, and that
But-
adds to the grayness of Qui-Gon.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if that's the case, though, my point still stands. Isn't that a terrible decision? Like,
I don't know. It's the will of the Force. Like the
Yeah.
theology of Jedis is kind of interesting.
yeah,
And I also thought it was fun. Well,
and foolhardy.
Well, I thought it was cool seeing, honestly, like I thought this as a another thought when watching, just even like I was wondering them just chance land on Tatooine. Like, is that the Force guiding Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to finding Anakin there?
That's
Or-
certainly what Qui-Gon thought.
Exactly. And so I know you guys have touched on kind of the whole will of the Force and whether it has its own kind of decisions and stuff. And I think that that's cool, potentially as a defense of perhaps the Force does have a will, right? And it's making things work out however it's supposed to.
yeah.
My contention is still that whether the Force has a will or not, and that's what Qui-Gon believes. Even if he believes Anakin's going to come out okay,
I
I'm
think-
still like,
I think
making a
the more
kid risk his life.
the more irresponsible thing was not that, because like I said, I think the justification of like the Force has set up these circumstances as they are, and as he was like discovering who Anakin was, he was learning that Anakin was apparently very powerful naturally adept with using the Force. So maybe like I could see him being sort of like a little more at ease, letting Anakin take those risks. Be that as it may, later on in the film, Qui-Gon, for some weird reason, takes Anakin
glad
away
you
from
brought this up.
Coruscant and brings him for
Back to a war zone.
a war zone on Naboo.
Yeah, the only reason he's going to Naboo is to fight a war.
Like, why did he bring Anakin with
Yeah.
him?
He's safe, even if he's okay. We'll hold him at the
very out
Jedi
of
Temple
place.
for now. And-
Yeah,
it's very out of
that,
place.
That like again, that was something I just noticed. I'm like, that makes no sense.
And then he brings him to the battlefield and then tells him to stay put.
Yeah.
After he brought him to danger.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what was George Lucas thinking in the writing? It just did not make it.
So you know what?
It was a contrivance. He was trying to
Yeah,
get.
it was very
I
contrived.
think I actually found similarities between almost nods to the other trilogies throughout that, like kind of a Return of the Jedi-esque feel where you got the multiple battles taking place at the same time.
Yeah, that was definitely.
Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
think he was just trying to
work in a space
work
battle.
in, and
and the way he blows up the Trade Federation
Yeah.
ship is also
very proton
similar.
torpedoes. Yeah, for sure. So was it needed? Probably not.
Not that it wasn't
alright.
needed.
It's
It was just
forgivable.
like unreal. Like it didn't make
Yes.
sense
Yeah.
even within the universe. Like,
Yeah.
like why would you bring this kid? You know,
With no
like
soldier
there's
skills.
no purpose to bringing him.
Yes.
Right.
Other than to risk his own life.
Yeah.
The Jedi have a bad track record of risking children's lives in
Yeah,
battlefields.
fair
but we'll leave that there.
So just
The Sith did nothing wrong.
Yeah, this is a common theme that I'm constantly criticizing you guys for. Is this the Sith did nothing wrong? The Empire's okay.
Frank, you're misconstruing what I'm saying. What I'm saying about the Sith is that they are what's the word? They're a minority group. They are by definition
Minority
All right.
religious sect.
All right.
a maligned religious sect who was exiled and punished and hunted for their religious beliefs,
Genocided
specifically.
again.
Yeah, I was about to say. I think you're kind of glossing over some of the atrocities of war that the Sith.
I'm not saying none of that happened, but my saying that they are a persecuted minority is not also saying that everything they do is good. I'm just saying
That is also a reality.
they're a persecuted minority. Those aren't mutually exclusive things. I can obviously acknowledge you can be a persecuted minority and do bad things as well. Those aren't mutually exclusive. You seem to think that I think they are, but I'm never saying that.
Are we gonna skim over pod racing? I'm just gonna.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I talked about.
Let's keep going. We're running long, so let's keep pushing through.
Should we just cut right to the end battle?
I love the spider throne that one of the Neimoidians rides on. He's got a chair on top of a spider droid. That's pretty fun. I want one.
Yeah.
So what's this common good thing?
Oh, so I didn't have time to research this, but I think the common good is a specific phrase in Ayn Randian literature that comes up in Atlas Shrugged.
I read Atlas Shrugged fairly recently.
Is it the common? There's another word that they
recall
use.
her using the common good. I recall her like hating the common good or the idea of the common good.
But I almost think that I'll research this and we'll put this in the one of the rare instances of Sam being wrong.
Okay.
But in any case, that sentiment of the common good being something that is actually evil. And and who says that in this? Like,
well,
it's Palpatine who's saying the people in the Senate have no respect for the common good. That's the specific phrase he uses, right? So he's very much sort of Ayn Rand's nightmare of the obsequious politician doing things for the common good. But
as long as it's for the common good, anything is justifiable.
Right. Precisely.
The ends always justifies the means.
Which is exactly how Palpatine rises to power. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. Anakin versus the council would be wild for a 7-year-old.
Yeah, what they do to him, where they're like reading his mind and like giving him this insane job interview, and he's like 7. It's like, what is happening? That would be insane. Imagine when you were 7 years old, if like 3 teachers you've never seen before just like cornered you in a room and
no, not just teachers, like the heads of
principals.
Oxford University. No, head of Oxford University, the head of Princeton, and the head of...
And they just start like reading your mind and like grilling you.
Actually, to be fair, to justify that, did we touch on midichlorians yet?
Oh, we didn't.
But whether our opinions on midichlorians notwithstanding, like he did have the highest ever recorded, so it could justify why the council.
This could be like a child genius.
Yeah, like why they'd want to see him.
I just think the way they talked to him and like antagonized him and read his mind seemed very inappropriate.
Maybe, but it seemed like Jedi are like they.
I know
they
they're
separate
bad.
kids from
they're bad. They're bad people. We've established it.
No, I don't think it's outside of Jedi.
I don't think it's
do a lot of evil stuff.
Within it's like internally consistent is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
they would
whether you see it as good or
they would do because they're bad. The Skylanes of Coruscant. I want to highlight that. I found that to be a very effective visual element. Is that this is exactly what you would expect a place as sophisticated technologically and geologically, because Coruscant, if you don't know, it doesn't necessarily come across in episode 1. The entire surface of the planet is a gigantic city that's hundreds and hundreds of stories above the ground, and it just has these sky lanes that you see in every scene in Coruscant over their shoulders. There's just thousands and thousands of what would be today like taxis, helicopters,
just like air traffic, basically.
Helicopters, Boeing 747s, ships of all different sizes is the point, going in all different directions, and it looks very crazy and futuristic. And I found it to be kind of hypnotic, and I was like, yeah, that was a good element. Although some of those ships, you really see the CGI datedness is like they're clearly just blurs. Like there's no texturing or like anything on top of them if you look too closely. But that aside, it looked very cool. It worked for me.
Yeah, and so the scene where Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, the whole crew, they go to the Gungans to try and convince them to join them in the fight against the Trade Federation. You thought that was like, I guess it was like very easy to convince convince them to join them.
It seemed to me that all Padme said was like, "We're in this together," and then he was like, "Oh, okay. In that case,"
and he like,
I didn't realize
yes,
that.
I'll commit my people to fighting a
Your war.
much overpowered enemy. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that is a good point. You could maybe explain it by, we don't know the context, maybe like the gesture of the queen like bowing down to the chieftain of the Gungans is like
That-
so monumentous. Like we have no concept of how
It is, again,
Yeah.
going back to that outside
Yeah,
history.
that's a pretty good read of that situation, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It would be nice to have that context. So
Yeah,
if we
yeah, you
saw
just-
more of the segregated
you sort of have to
societies.
a little bit of guesswork, you know, but
that headcanon works, I suppose.
yeah. Yeah.
There was lots of fun laser sounds in the Battle of Theed.
Yeah, the sound design.
Great. That's
Oh
always
yeah,
been
the
a part
great
of Star Trek.
lightsaber buzzing and
Yeah.
That weird sonic pistol that goes, wow.
Yeah, Can we
Another
also have a
episode for
separate
Sam.
offshoot of Sam just recreating sounds from Star Wars?
I like can't even. It's a very odd sound.
Yeah.
It sticks out. It's not a regular
Yeah,
laser blaster.
it's super cool.
yeah. You didn't like the grass in the Gungan battle.
That Gungan that's one of the
Yeah.
places where the CGI
Does
looked
not hold
the
up.
worst.
Yeah.
You think so? I don't
It
know.
just looks like a green texture that
The
they
ground
put on
is
a
so
hill.
bad.
no, it looked alien to me. Like it looked like
I think they were going for like a field, rolling hills though,
Yeah,
and
that's-
it did not translate at all.
They were
I
going
don't
for
know.
an
It
looks
old
like the,
Windows XP.
exactly. What I
Totally,
was
that's
gonna
exactly
say.
what it looked
But
like.
the Windows XP thing was better.
I don't know.
I gotta make that my desktop. Just
Yeah,
that
just-
literal Windows XP background, but with
But
like
with Gungans
an
on
ATT
it? Yeah.
or something.
It looked like ceramic.
Yeah,
Like
it did not
painted
look
green
good.
ceramic.
That being said, though, the
tile.
battle droids themselves, I
They
think
looked great. That's
Yeah.
what, it's such like
hit
it's-
and miss.
and it's so
Such
unfortunate
extremes, yeah.
because it's
the
like
okay.
you have good CG on top of bad CG, and it just does not fit. But it's like
a lot of the battle droids, I think parts of them
Some
were
of them were
practical, and
practical
that's the thing. It's you got to have that practical
Okay,
part. In
I've
it as
always
well.
loved, even when I was a kid, I loved the scene when they deploy the battle droids and then they're like, they press the button and they uncurl and they stand up and pull their guns. I just like,
That's
it's just
very
visually,
good.
it's just really cool.
They
That's
are
great
cool.
design.
They are cool. Not a big fan of like the personality and the
Yes,
dialogue
agreed.
of the battle droids.
Agreed.
I thought it was really goofy and just like I wasn't scared of those silly droids.
Yeah, they were
right?
menacing
Yeah,
at
they
all.
were not menacing at all, and they were also just so easy to
Take out.
to
Yeah.
take out. Like
Which is interesting because again, going back into the EU,
yeah,
like the what the Naboo experience, you know, playing video games and stuff, it's a lot darker. You know, they get rounded up and put in essentially concentration camps by battle
Right,
droids.
right,
Battle
right.
droids are supposed to be like they're battle droids, right?
Yeah.
The Naboo are constantly referred to as a peaceful people. They don't have a standing army.
Yeah.
All the guys fighting are actually their police forces. They're
Right.
not even the military.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
And so it's kind of you kind of underestimate it's on film, at least it's not portrayed the dynamic of like if you have
Yeah.
professional soldiers invade your city, you only have like a small police force that gets easily overpowered and overmatched and get rounded up and put into concentration camps, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
very dark story if I phrase it like that.
yeah.
Versus what you see on screen, like these goofy droids, like
Yeah, I thought I just thought it was like a missed opportunity to
have a darker.
Yeah, like it just made the Trade Federation seem sort of weak, you know, like and
Yeah, for sure.
and I guess they kind of were because Palpatine was just basically using them as a scapegoat, you know,
Yes, absolutely.
to take power, but I don't know.
There could have been more done there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And especially when you see later iterations of battle droids like an IG-88 or something, like droids that are like very, very competent.
Menacing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and deadly and lethal, you know, it's...
Or even like the HK-47 models. From
Yeah, HK-47.
Like,
Yeah,
that
totally.
thing is scary.
Yeah.
And it makes jokes, but it's scary.
Yeah.
I do not like meat bags.
Hello, meat bag.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Real quick, we haven't actually discussed Qui-Gon at all. and
Talked about him a little bit.
he's actually one of the older I'm getting, I think you kind of miss some of the nuances as a kid. He's just kind of like this old guy or whatever. But revisiting him, I think he's actually so cool. And just his like the gray kind of does whatever he wants to kind of get the job done. Yeah.
Did I bring this up in our Force episode about the linguistic similarity between Qui-Gon Jinn's name and the practice of Qigong?
I think it was mentioned somewhere by one of us, but yeah,
So- Qui-Gon Jinn is just sort of superficially similar to this thing called Qigong, which is essentially cultivating your Force powers through Kung Fu. And I always wondered if that was like an on purpose.
Oh, it was definitely on
thing.
purpose.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But yes, Qui-Gon's like gray, kind of roguish thing,
Yeah.
which it comes up a lot later too when you start to get introduced to characters like Count Dooku, who, you know, was Qui-Gon's master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that kind of line of like, they add an element of like questioning the council, questioning the authority of like, because the Jedi were always portrayed as the good guys. Everyone's trying to be a Jedi. But when you see the Jedi Council and Qui-Gon's always this kind of like doubting voice of theirs,
Yeah.
it adds an element of like, are the Jedi right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is the council wrong?
Yeah.
Could the council be wrong?
And I love that line that Obi-Wan says. It's towards the end too, where he's like, "You would be on the council if you would just follow the code more."
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of showing more of that, like he does what he wants.
Yeah. But he's
Yeah.
also, you know, he is wise, and that's,
Yeah, and that's
you know,
totally.
he would have been on the council, right?
yeah,
Tells you
he's
that
good
he-
enough to be. And
Yeah,
he's,
in some ways, I feel like Qui-Gon he's almost like the quintessential Jedi, though, in a lot of ways.
And yeah,
I
in some
agree.
ways,
he's
Luke,
responsible for the most destruction the galaxy has ever seen.
exactly, some quintessential Jedi.
I was hoping to come into this one and have legitimate conversations on Jedi versus Sith, and maybe I would be able to sway stuff, but
Sam's pretty entrenched in his position.
Yeah.
The Sith
No,
are
no.
evil, and so are the Jedi.
No, but like he's
From
a
my point of view, the
like
Jedi.
he is like he is like a paragon of like wisdom. Whether he just missed a generation on the chosen one, but he
that would be crazy. Imagine if Qui-Gon trained Luke,
yeah
Yeah.
like
cool.
in like a Blue Harvest kind of.
but like he's just
Imagine if Darth Vader trained Princess Leia. That happened in Infinities.
Oh, wow.
imagine if Darth Sidious trained Jar Jar Binks.
Blown.
No, but like you know, he cares for like the oppressed and the weak, but he's also like he's very like street smart and highly skilled and highly adept in the Force, you know. So but he's also like he's a character that you least wanted to die in the film because you really want to know more about him, but you don't like. I had so much. I remember initially watching it. I had so many more questions about who Qui-Gon was.
So
you know?
cool.
Yes.
So yeah, it definitely felt like it was a huge opening for way more expanded universe material with that character.
Yeah.
Which
So more on just building on Qui-Gon. We of course get the Duel of the Fates. Great piece of music, by the way.
One of the best ones.
That really, when that duel, Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan started, and the music kicked in, like almost more than anything is how good the music.
Yeah.
That piece of music is. Like,
I would
really
genuinely like to know how many kids ran around with sticks running through a field going dun 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 dun, right, just like right before you. Yeah. Oh, that was my childhood right there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that was the soundtrack to all of my combat.
Star Wars kid was all of us. Let's be honest.
And on that note too, like it was definitely like Lucas really upped the ante with the lightsaber fighting and the choreography. And I think it was really cool, and I'm glad it wasn't just the same as like the previous three movies. Like he really sort of pushed the creativity in what you could actually do.
The
with
action really is another notch. And just that moment when Darth Maul, like the double-bladed lightsaber, never been seen before.
Yeah, yeah.
Like so cool.
It did
You're
exist
wrong.
before. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. and
No
that's-
way.
That's one of the really cool things.
Was
It's actually
Exar Kun before?
Exar Kun
No way.
was-
I did not know that.
Tales of the Jedi
That makes
was
sense.
94, I believe.
That makes total
so
sense.
just to bring everybody up to speed, Exar Kun was one of the there were Sith for a couple thousand years before him, but when Exar Kun fell as a Jedi and turned to the dark side, that was like when the Sith first became a real galactic threat. And Exar Kun invented the double-bladed lightsaber. And then in the history of Star Wars, double-bladed lightsabers were sort of considered the Sith lightsaber.
Yeah, like a dark side.
They were aggressive weapons.
Yeah, they were very aggressive, and so
Yeah, they weren't defensive. They were there for killing.
Yeah, so although there are Jedi who use double-bladed, it was much more common associated with the Sith. And so the fact that Darth Maul was also a Zabrak, and Zabraks were also part of the EU, but not part of the original movies. They were all in comics and books.
Yeah.
And so those are two great pulls from that mythology that were incorporated.
Suddenly they have screen time and they're kind of canonized in a new way, in a new light, which was very
And
cool.
it is great that Lucas was willing to use stuff from the EU.
Other people's ideas.
Yeah, other
Yeah.
people's ideas on his IP. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
One of my favorite scenes actually during that battle is when. So this comes back to the whole idea of force run. First of all, why doesn't Obi-Wan just force run through all those labors?
Because he's out of mana.
Right, exactly. So that's the thought. But
FP, force power.
the
He needs to recharge his blue meter at the bottom of the screen.
But when the lasers close on the last one, and having Maul on the other side and Qui-Gon when he sits down to meditate, I think is such a cool portrayal of the Jedi and the Sith, and having Maul just kind of walking back and forth,
Pacing,
prowling,
yeah.
almost like a panther.
I'm
like
so
a
glad you
predator.
said. I was literally thinking the exact same
Man,
thing.
I think that is such a sweet and just having Qui-Gon just kind of sit there, recharge. He's taxed. He's just been through the ringer with this clearly more
But
athletic.
he doesn't even really look
I know, but just
tired.
just
He looks very peaceful.
just the fact though that Sith very confidently handles two, a Jedi Master and a Padawan, and he's holding his own against these guys, is just
He looks like he's having fun. doing
totally
it.
yeah. It's so, and just that portrayal of the Jedi pausing, regathering himself for what's coming next, and the Sith just all right, let's get this fight going. I'm ready to finish this guy. Is so sweet, so cool.
And then more cool things. And so I'm thinking of doing a whole episode on this, but the research is going to take me a long time on body horror. Do you guys know what body horror is? Is that a term you've ever heard of? If
You should really enunciate the last part of that.
body horror. If you've ever seen a David Fincher movie, like The Fly or something. Anyway, so it's basically just really bad, unpleasant things happening to human bodies.
Oh.
And we see some of the first elements of it here in episode 1. You see pretty detailed the burning hole through Qui-Gon's chest, and that's fairly upsetting. But then it gets worse because he really just eats marble floor. When he topples, he goes face first, slack body. It's if you imagine from a sort of kneeling position, if your body went totally slack and your head just smashes into the floor, the kind of damage that would do to your face. Not good. And then later on, of course, Darth Maul gets cut in half. And this is something that always really bothered me when I watched it when I was a kid, is I would imagine myself getting cut in half. Because he appears to be conscious as well as he's falling and cut in half.
Yeah, his eyes are open.
And then he smashes into the
walls.
rim of the walls on the way down. It's so brutal.
But
Interesting-
sorry, go ahead.
So when episode 1 came out, a lot of my friends in school went to watch it before me, and they all talked about how Darth Maul gets cut in half.
That's so not fair.
And it was like,
was it a spoil? Like, was it spoiled for you?
well, I mean, as a kid, I didn't really care about spoilers. I just wanted to know what happened. I wanted to watch it.
Right.
But my mind, I visualized him getting cut vertically in half. I was just trying to picture how that would look with the lightsaber getting cut, like from crown of the head down to the crotch.
You should have read Splinter of the Mind's Eye, because
Someone gets
Darth
that.
Vader does that
Yeah.
to an Imperial officer.
Yeah.
But
That was canon.
but that's what I always visualized, was him getting cut in half vertically. So when I actually saw him get cut in half sideways, it wasn't that bad.
You're expecting so much
Something more
worse.
grand.
That is
Yeah.
the PG way to bisect a bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even that has kind of throwbacks to Empire Strikes Back, Luke falling down the shaft, right? Like all throughout a Phantom Menace.
rhymes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you get, and that's some of the stuff that I think, those subtleties that I kind of missed when I was a kid watching it, and now rewatching it's been,
maybe just to land this plane, we'll all kind of give our overall impressions. Maybe we can start with Frankie, go to me, Sam, and then we'll end with you, Christian. And then we'll just kind of, did you like or dislike the movie? What was your overall impression, Frankie?
Sure, yeah. I think Lucas definitely took some risks that maybe didn't quite pay off. But on the other hand, I think there's a lot of, honestly, stuff that filmmaking as a whole, you kind of see the ripple effect that this movie actually had on the filmmaking industry, which I think sometimes gets lost behind, I think, people's sometimes unnecessary hate of the acting and the writing, which absolutely has its flaws, but kind of revisiting it, I don't hate it to the same degree that it had on its release. And it could be that I'm just biased because I was such a young kid seeing it. There's a lot of nostalgia tied to it. But didn't hate it. Action in it still holds up today as I think some of the coolest lightsaber dueling.
Yeah, I think I liked the movie. Definitely wasn't like a perfect film, a flawed film for sure. I think, like I said, there was a few like plot points that like were really like just weren't believable to me. And then obviously there was a lot of rough dialogue. Some of the character portrayals were a little cringy, those kind of things. But overall, I agree with you. It was actually kind of bold and in a lot of ways like going the direction that Lucas went, more to like this kind of like political drama away from like a spaghetti western, is like a very big risk to take. And so I thought that was cool. There was also so much world building in the film that I really liked, and I thought it was just cool. It made you use your imagination much more in sort of the world building of the Star Wars universe. So that's what I liked. And then there was like I like the political intrigue. I like the building of the character for Palpatine. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, I mean, big dislikes obviously was like Jar Jar Binks. I thought that the Trade Federation was portrayed as being just way too weak and inept. And then that's about it. Annoying dialogue relatively throughout, but I didn't really like hate any of the other characters. Like, but I thought it was a good movie. It was a good flawed movie. Poor execution, but some cool bigger ideas with it and cool aesthetics, I thought. So
Totally.
My overall impression was, I think little people were very well represented in this movie. Anakin's Rhodian friend, clearly a little person. There's that beige Yoda guy, also a little person.
Even PL.
There's another little person on the pod track.
And Yoda himself, too.
Yoda himself. But, I mean, he's not played by a real person. I mean, and really, when you think about it, when was the last action movie you saw a little person in who wasn't Peter Dinklage?
Yeah, good point. I don't know.
And he even goes back further in Star Wars. Is the Ugnaughts were all little people, and R2D2 is a little person.
Ewoks?
Ewoks are all little people. Star Wars is very little person positive.
Do we need another side
I don't know why
podcast?
you guys
Zach?
think that's funny. But it was the greatest bad movie of all time. It held up. I enjoyed it. Maybe it was just because of nostalgia, but I was like, I'm having fun. This is a good movie.
Yeah.
Obviously flawed. I went over that, but I think it's a good movie.
I think one thing, sorry, butting into is the thing that kind of like for me sets this like the prequel trilogy apart from like the sequel trilogy is just the internal consistency of it and the a consistent narrative structure, which I thought was like at least there was like there was a lot of continuity from going from the original to the prequel trilogy, and that was like a really big pet peeve of mine in the new trilogy was just it just felt so disjointed and no continuity. But that's kind of the last thing I have to say about that.
Yeah, overall, my final rating, I'd say it's a resounding eh. There's some serious misdirection with some of the choices that were made. We don't have to beat a dead horse. You know what those are. Some generally boring plot that sets up, I think, a better story if it stood as a standalone installment. I think the way, a lot of the story beats hold up. Like if I told the plot to you conceptually, it would sound like a good story. So I think that the flaws in the execution
Totally.
more than the story itself, which is a redeeming quality of the film. There's lots of cool world building and lots of cool aspects that are introduced. The Republic at its high point, a lot of the characters like Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul. Obviously the score is timeless. And it all serves to set the new tone for the next couple of movies. This is what Star Wars is going to look like now.
Yeah.
In reflection to what we knew of the original trilogy. Like I said, if you modified the story or like the lines or like the specifics of it, I think you could get a way better movie out of it. But I think the core material is good. I think it's great material to start with. I mean, the whole beginnings and origins of Anakin and the Republic and all that.
You know what? Sorry, just before you go on, I was thinking even when I was watching it, this would have been a way, if this was like in the kind of golden age of television we have now, it would have been a way better like
a Clone
TV
Wars
TV show.
I thought that, and I forgot to mention that.
If they just like wrote the prequels all as a TV show, because then they would have had much more time to flesh out the characters and execute the plot better. So
yeah, absolutely.
But continue
I would
your
agree.
thoughts. Yeah.
Overall, I think it's my second least liked of the prequel trilogy movies. Above
That was quite a sentence.
it's above the Clone Wars is what I'm trying to say.
So it's in the middle.
My second
It's in the
least
middle.
favorite.
Right.
Of the first prequel.
So your second favorite
Of the new trilogy, yes. It gets
New trilogy.
No, of the old
of the old
of
new
the
trilogy,
prequel.
the prequel trilogy, not to be confused with the sequel trilogy or the original trilogy.
Yeah.
It builds more lore than it destroys. It sets up a lot
yeah.
of the pre-Empire era that is very cool. Metachlorians are a questionable addition to the lore, but it doesn't wreak havoc like The Last Jedi does on established characters. Totally. It tells a coherent, if not sleepy, story, unlike the frantic and illogical story of The Rise of Skywalker. And it's an original story, so it gets credit over The Force Awakens.
Except for how it's also like mirroring.
It's got
There's a difference
it's
between
got
mirroring
echoes.
copy
Yeah, there's
and
echoes, and then there's
straight up ripping off.
yeah. Paint by numbers.
I agree. And watching it again, it wasn't like quite just the like hero's
Hate
journey
fest,
carbon copy. That like we don't even really know who really was the main protagonist in the movie.
So that was actually a big criticism I had.
Okay.
It doesn't have a clear one.
There is no clear protagonist, which hurts, I think, its narrative story. I think if they chose to focus on one character, if you told the story of Qui-Gon,
Is that part of his risks though? Is that a?
I think on it, like,
because I think
like George Lucas
intentionally
for a
he
lot
did
of
that.
reasons, but he's not a great writer. And
Sure.
so he's got cool story
I
ideas.
I agree.
And even
100%
with the
that.
prequel or the original trilogy, he had other people editing his work for him.
Yeah.
Especially his now ex-wife, who had a huge hand in making the original trilogy what you know, and not the what's the Star Wars the original comic book series.
I forget its name.
Yeah, but
I thought it was Blue Harvest, but it's not. I think
With
it's
Luke Starlighter or whatever.
I think
yeah,
it's
like
the
a lot
Star
of the
Wars.
changes that happened could be credited.
Twice
Isn't it
Star
Anakin
Wars
Starkiller?
Or
Is that
Starkiller,
his name?
There's a
original
lot
character?
of changes, yeah. But my point remains the same: is that a lot of that evolution came from other people's input that took his good idea and made it something great.
Yeah.
But by the time episode 1 rolled around, he had so much, say. He just throw his weight around. No one would question his decisions. So that good core exists in episode 1.
Yeah.
And even in this goes for the entire prequel trilogy.
Still like Revenge of the Sith.
I do no.
Given
Revenge
way
of the
less credit than it
yes,
deserves.
Absolutely, we'll get to Revenge of the Sith eventually. But just as the overall tone, like, could have been better. They all could have been way better.
Yeah, they could have been.
It been strained. The idea's been strained through someone else's editing, for example.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, not having a protagonist in the story, I think, hurts the story. And imagine if the movie was about Qui-Gon. You yourself confessed that you would have liked to know more about this guy, right? If you focused...
But would it have just fallen into the hero's journey trap?
It doesn't have to.
The story is, though...
No, because
I think it is about Anakin. When you really come back to it, it is about Anakin.
So exactly. So
If you had to
if
pick
the story
somebody,
is about
yeah.
Anakin, then Anakin should be the focus of your story.
Right.
You can't introduce your main character halfway through the film,
Right.
visit with him a couple of times in a few scenes, and then really tell another story altogether.
It's
That's
almost
not
like
how
Anakin
stories
was
work.
brought along to an
To a
unnecessary battle, unnecessarily, when
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, this movie's about him. Let's just pull him in
Right,
there.
exactly. So I think
Right.
if it went through
That's
some more
a good
focus,
insight.
some more,
Yeah.
the ideas were refined more.
Yeah, I like Qui-Gon origin story,
Oh, that would be so sick.
would have been cool as episode 1 instead.
Yeah, and
of-
then you can still introduce characters like Obi-Wan and Anakin.
But you could even do like a little 5-minute flashback montage of Qui-Gon becoming a Jedi or whatever.
Yeah, and you could
Does
even
that,
introduce
does
future
that
characters
do
like Count
disservice,
Dooku.
though, to the idea that those first 6 movies are about the Skywalkers? That's who they're about. So to then
It's
make
still
the
about the
first
Skywalker,
installment of it all the main character about someone else, it
You
would
can
almost
you
feel
can
like a
tell story
standalone
about
movie.
someone else while telling a broader picture. Game of Thrones does that very
Sure.
well. It changes
fair.
perspectives constantly, but the greater narrative story is about X or Y through the eyes of someone else.
Yeah,
so,
that's fair.
and I'm not saying Qui-Gon should have been the main character. You could have told the story all about Anakin. I would
could have been Obi-Wan even.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Any one of those characters would have worked. They just had to focus on one and tell that story instead,
Yeah.
of,
Right.
or pare it down to a couple of them being the main characters.
Yeah.
And that is a huge criticism I have of episode 1 is who is the protagonist of that story.
I don't know. I didn't hate that idea of, it's just different.
Interestingly enough, though, that is actually so I actually went back and looked at a lot of the old critiques, because as a kid I was always like, man, people really hate this movie. And I was looking back, and that's actually one of the main critiques, that a lot of the critiques is like the CG, the writing, and the fact that there is no main protagonist. And so it's interesting to see you kind of echo those same critiques of the movie. But I think sometimes it gets wrapped up in the hype beast that it was at the time, that it like...
Yeah. I hate to use expectations as a marker, because it can also be an excuse for lazy movies. You know what
sure.
I'm talking about. But if any movie had
Jurassic Park.
no, try again.
It does work for Jurassic Park though.
But
Or Jurassic World rather.
I don't know, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
You were just saying it could be like used like for being lazy writing basically.
Oh no! Of all the
Expectations.
Star Wars
Yeah, the
movies,
expectation.
Episode 1 had the greatest expectation
Yeah.
placed on it, because it's the
Yeah.
first time since Return of the Jedi. No one even knew Star Wars was coming back. This was
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like
I think everyone
premeditated.
expected. Yeah. It was
So
done.
the amount of expectation placed on this movie would have been almost impossible to, I think, to meet. Especially because Lucas, we weren't going back to see Luke. We weren't going back to do those other things. Lucas
Yeah.
already had a vision. That he, even way back when he did the original trilogy, he was going to make that vision a reality, right? It's just the audience didn't know what to expect. So I hate that excuse for other movies, but for this one, I will say it did have, a crazy amount of hype
Yeah.
to live up to that I don't think it could have satisfied it.
Yeah, there's
everyone.
probably no
I don't
way.
think it
And
would have
Lucas
been
himself has actually gone on the record saying that exact thing. He's like, I don't think I could have made a movie that
Would have pleased. Yeah.
the expectations that came out
Yeah.
with.
No, absolutely. That is not an excuse for the flaws of this movie. There
For
are
sure.
many, and it's you
Yeah.
know, like I said, it's towards the bottom of Star Wars movies for me, for all the reasons that I've mentioned. But it's not
kind of in
bad.
the middle for me. But
it's an movie.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's a good movie, in my opinion.
Yes. I could watch the last ending battle and call it there.
Yeah.
You know, the scene like where that last like little bit of the lightsaber battle between Maul and like after Qui-Gon dies, and it's just Obi-Wan and Maul. It was like very good.
Yeah,
it was like,
the butterfly flip that
yeah,
Maul
they
does.
they went
so
like
sweet.
so fast. Anyways, I'm just
coming back to
yeah. It's like whew.
glory.
One last criticism. I kind of really disliked the very end scene, and that was one part where the music was just terrible. I hated the score that they had.
The
Like the
parade.
Yeah,
Boss
it was like
Nass
the
holds up that
parade.
random
Yeah, and
orb.
Bob-
Yeah.
it was just
So
so
that
tacky.
too, that's a nod back. When I was rewatching it, I'm like, that's totally a nod back to the throne room when they all get their medals. And
Yeah.
it rhymes, right?
Yeah, but
So-
it was tacky.
And it was
thought
unnecessary.
And the music was like, it was actually like the first bad score I've heard.
You want to know? So I had the episode 1 soundtrack when I was a kid, and I used to like to listen to the parade song. They had it on.
It was so
Sometimes
bad.
when I need a little extra on the way to work or something, I'll put on different songs from the soundtrack. And when I got my first car, I would actually do the Trench Run soundtrack and pretend my car was an X-wing, and I would just rip through traffic. And this morning on the way home, I was definitely listening to the ending credit song. So there's a confession.
Yeah, well,
Kind of a mirror back to Return of the Jedi and bad ending scores is also the Ewok
totally.
celebration song
Yeah.
too.
Like that one too, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if I just have rose-colored glasses for
Yup,
Star
it's
Wars.
way better.
And they can do no wrong until I remembered what happened with Disney, and then I'm like, oh, there it is. There's the wrong.
yeah, cool. Well, this podcast has been nearly as long as the movie itself, so you may as well just listen to us and watch the movie. You'll get the play-by-play. On that note, we'll sign out. Peace out, guys.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to give the show a 5-star rating and review, and give us a follow on social media. This episode was produced and edited by me, Jordan Swaim, written and directed by Christian Lutz and Sam Swaim. All original music was scored and recorded by my music project, Farewell to Shadowland.